Now, I know a lot of people reference George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead, but not as many horror fans really talk about 1973's The Crazies, also known as codename Trixie. And the premise of this one is that we have a military plane crash near Evans City in the great state of Pennsylvania. Now, this isn't just any kind of military plane. This military plane, or this particular military plane, is carrying an extremely hazardous biological weapon that's extremely contagious and turns anyone exposed to it into a homicidal maniac. So the whole town gets cordoned off, and the whole of Evans City, presumably. And it's up to a small group of survivors, two of them with military training, to try and escape the cordon and escape the Crazies and escape the military, trying to cover it all up with deadly force without losing their lives or minds. Now, I know a lot of this probably all sounds at least somewhat familiar to fans of George A. Romero and fans of Dawn of the Dead, and it definitely is, because The Crazies, in my opinion, was pretty much a dress rehearsal for Dawn of the Dead. It was an experimental movie that explores ideas that Dawn of the Dead and even Day of the Dead and Land of the Dead would explore later on in greater detail on a greater budget and greater budgets. So you have the Crazies / zombies, you have the collapse and corruption of institutions, trusted institutions, pretty much an exploration, a bit of a dry run of a lot of the ideas and concepts that Romero would go on to explore in Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, and of course Land of the Dead, and the other ones that we won't sort of talk about that weren't of as higher quality. And it almost feels like George A. Romero had Dawn of the Dead gestating in his mind at the time that he came up with The Crazies, but he didn't have the money to do it justice, I'm assuming, so he came up with The Crazies, also known as codename Trixie, as a kind of pared down version of Dawn of the Dead, a proto-Dawn of the Dead, as it were. But that's not to say that The Crazies is some kind of Timu Dawn of the Dead or an inferior dry run of Dawn of the Dead. It still does dance to the beat of its own drum, and that drum would be the military drums that make up the soundtrack, I guess you'd say. So quite an interesting movie in its own right for those of you who've seen Night of the Living Dead, seen Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, but have perhaps missed The Crazies. Or a good fresh way to think of it, even if you have seen The Crazies, is as a kind of proto-Dawn of the Dead, a dry run, a test run on a smaller scale, smaller budget, just to test the waters and test the plot points and ideas and themes that had come to us in a much larger scale later on. So The Crazies is a very cool little movie. As I say, it is set in Evans City, has quite a few Dawn of the Dead alumni and Day of the Dead alumni, for those of you who'll be able to keep an eye peeled for them. People like Richard Liberty, for example, and you've also got the scientist from Dawn of the Dead, you've got the television interviewer from Dawn of the Dead, and a few other familiar faces in this chaotic military contagion run riot movie. A lot of the themes of this one have kind of become eerily true over the years. It's not hard to see the parallels between The Crazies and the whole COVID lockdown period, the whole COVID phenomenon, because as with COVID in The Crazies, it is difficult to tell who's infected by the crazy contagion and who's just losing it purely because of the stress of the situation and pressure of the situation and the general surreal nature of this weird biological weapon lockdown. So that's a pretty cool theme that the Crazies explores, is how it is difficult in times of stress, in times of war, in times of duress to tell the sane people from the crazy ones. And we did see a lot of that during COVID, for better or worse. And we'll probably see a bit of that during the current oil crisis, the current Mad Max style oil crisis that we look to be experiencing at a greater level than we have been over coming weeks and months, but we'll see what happens. So The Crazies is one of those movies, a little hard to see on physical media, unfortunately. Fortunately, it is streaming on Tubi at the moment. Tubi's all free, wonderfully free, like all streaming services should be. So Tubi is the best name to check out The Crazies. Interestingly enough, on Tubi, it is streaming under the title of Codename Trixie. And it's worth, if you are searching for it on Tubi, searching both titles, The Crazies and Codename Trixie, if you're having trouble finding it. But it's streaming here in Australia and presumably in the US as well. So one of Romero's more unsung movies, The Crazies, one of his more underrated. It's up there with Martin as being possibly the most underrated Romero movie of all time. Martin probably slightly edges it out, the Romero sensitive vampire movie. But nonetheless, Crazies is great and has a lot to offer as well. Especially in terms of that social commentary about who are the real mad people, who are the sane ones. And quite often in this movie, the sane people are acting more irrationally than the insane people, which I think, unfortunately, more of us are seeing more frequently with everything going on with with foreign wars and COVID and everything else, financial crises. We see the themes of The Crazies playing out in reality, in real time, and I do miss the days when it really was more of a hypothetical scenario rather than something we were living in our lives, but it is what it is. So The Crazies, as I said, stars Richard Liberty, who played Dr. Frankenstein in Day of the Dead. A couple of other Dawn of the Dead alumni whose names escape me at the moment. There's Lynn Lowry in one of her first roles. Lynn Lowry, best remembered probably from I Drink Your Blood, the great rabid meat pie hippie movie from the 70s, another one that I certainly recommend. And she's basically playing she personifies the themes of the movie. I mean, early on, Lynn Lowry clearly isn't infected, but she has a few kangaroos loose in the top paddock. She's a few cans short of a six-pack, or a few marbles loose. Insert whatever euphemism for mentally unwell you'd like to here. But she sort of personifies that earlier on in the movie, and spoiler alert, she does contract the virus later on in the movie, but ironically, it does seem to make her more sane, if anything, which is bizarre. And there's some truly creepy scenes between her and her father, played by Richard Liberty, and both of them are great in this film. We also see the two Vietnam veterans, two firefighters, and they were clearly prototypes for Roger and Peter in Dawn of the Dead. And it's impossible to sort of overlook that when you're watching The Crazies. So a lot of the themes, a lot of the plot elements, and a lot of the ideas for Dawn of the Dead are certainly to be found here in The Crazies. And at times it often feels more of a Night of the Living Dead sequel than Dawn of the Dead does, at least tonally, which is interesting. So another reason to check it out. So if you've seen The Crazies, if you love The Crazies or hate The Crazies, please let us know your comments down in the comments below. As I said, if you'd like to see it, the easiest way at the moment is probably on Tubi, if you don't already own a copy on physical media. And what are some of your other favourite George Romero movies? Are you a Dawn of the Dead man or woman? Do you like Martin? Do you like The Crazies? Do you like Day of the Dead? Let us know in the comments. If you're enjoying the content here, by all means, please like, share and subscribe. And I do hope to see you next time, and hope you'll take it easy.